Is there more to midlife than just getting through it? Absolutely. Welcome. I'm your host, Debbie Cunningham, jazz artist turned midlife mentor, and I'm here to say to you loud and clear, it's time for your midlife crescendo. Well, hey friends. As this episode drops today, I will be returning from a week at the beach for some well-needed self-care and rest. Derek and I haven't been to the beach for a few years, and right now as I record this, I am excited to see the waves and the sand. And excited to see our longtime friends who are meeting us there. We have been friends with these two couples for over 40 years, and we've never vacationed together. I was reflecting on what makes a friendship like this last. We've been apart for 36 years, except for the occasional visit over the span of that time. Initially, we kept touch by snail mail and email, then phone calls, but the bottom line is that it's about being intentional with our relationships. We are back this week with part 2 of my conversation with Marcia Ramirez about nurturing the 3 most important relationships in a woman's life. We talk about ideas for cultivating deeper friendships and deepening our relationships with God and our soul care. But stick around to the end because I share a personal story that you might find helpful as you cultivate your own time with God. So here's part 2 of my conversation with Marcia. You talk about friendship killers in your book.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about those?
Well, comparison is one
Yes.
of the friendship killers. Jealousy. There's if you find yourself being, and I learned from Brene Brown in her book Atlas of the Heart, where she talks about different emotions, the big difference between being envious and being jealous, because sometimes people think those are the same things. But envious is when you see that somebody else has something that you want. I'm envious of your car or your dress or whatever. Jealousy is where you think someone's going to take something that's yours already. It's really two completely different emotions.
Oh.
So like, I'm jealous of your attention to my husband because I think you might take my husband. That's jealousy. That's not envy. But envy is where you want what they have. And so I break that up a little bit in my book and kind of talk about those two different emotions because a lot of people bulk them into one. But, being jealous of someone who has another friend, it's like, oh, they're spending more time with that person than me. They're trying to take my best friend, claiming a best friend, all of this stuff that can just suffocate the life out of a friendship. We all need a variety of friends. And
Yes.
it's okay if your bestie is going to have lunch with another friend without you. It's okay. And you should encourage that because it will help all of you become better people. My closest knit friends cannot be everything for me. We all need a variety of friends in our life. And so, yeah, that's a big one that will shut down a friendship really quick. Another one is what I call common enemy intimacy. It's where you bond with people over what you hate rather than what you love. You know what I mean? And that's not a truly intimate connection. That is an unhealthy type of friendship, and eventually it will blow up. That's not something that will really sustain a real friendship. Another one is
It doesn't bring life into your friendship at all.
it doesn't. It's like, you're at work and you both hate your boss and you bond over hating your boss. And so you find yourself going out to lunch just so you can both vent about your boss. And you both have this common enemy, right? But eventually, that's just a toxic relationship. That is not a good, healthy friendship. And we need to recognize that. So another one is the silent treatment. It's where, if you have a conflict with a friend and you just go silent, you're not willing to sit down and talk it through, and then you're just leaving them to assume, like, why won't they call me back? Why are they ghosting me? That will kill a friendship. Friendships you have to be willing to have hard conversations because there is no such thing as a friendship without conflict. You're going to have
Mm-hmm.
conflict. Two different human beings are not going to see the same on everything, and that's okay. That's how we learn from each other. Some of
Right.
my richest friendships are people that on paper, people would go, wow, how are y'all friends? Because we're so different, but we have common core values that connect us. And
Yes.
so if we have those common core values, then we can look at other things differently and have good conversation about, oh, I don't see things that way. Tell me more. Tell me why you see things like that. I would like to learn. And you still may not agree, but you can put a face to somebody else who has a different point of view. They don't become the enemy anymore. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I wish we could normalize agreeing to disagree,
Yeah.
because I think we're never going to agree on anything in life,
Mm.
complete 100%.
No.
But being able to have hard conversations, I mean, this is why marriages die, because people think they have to think exactly the same on everything
Mm-hmm.
else. But you have to have a place where your backstory, everything you went through until this time, and your friend's backstory all affect the positions we take in life on
Mm-hmm.
everything. We have to understand that we're going to have a difference of an opinion.
Right.
And that doesn't mean we can't be friends. Just because you like lobster and I don't, or I like skiing and you don't, doesn't mean we can't be friends. It's
Mm-hmm.
silly.
Right.
So I think those are silly examples, I know, but I'm just saying it's everything doesn't have to be alike. And I think I would love it if our culture would normalize a little bit of difference in opinion without the whole cancel culture. That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Or yeah. And just canceling a friendship,
Right.
it's like, well, if they're going to vote for A and I'm voting for B, then we can't be friends anymore. Oh, yes, you
It's
can.
crazy.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. And people draw on these lines and picking teams, and then, and again, that's kind of why I envisioned God and my girlfriends, because I want our community to be a safe place where you can come in and you can express your opinions in a kind way. Again, going back
Right.
to those core moral values: kindness, compassion, understanding, love. If we can all agree on that, then that helps. It helps us when we're having those hard conversations. Because I mean, I
Absolutely.
have family that we're miles apart on the way we think about things politically and religiously, and those are hard conversations to have. But I love them. They're wonderful people, right? And
Yeah.
so learning to do that is important, and not just surrounding ourselves in these big echo chambers to where it just fuels this fire of our way of thinking is the only way of thinking. No, there's so many different, experiences in life that create, like you said, create our opinions. We have not
Yes.
walked the same path, and our paths have, caused us to have these different opinions on things, and they're all valid.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about cultivating friendship, because I know we've talked about some of the things that kill it, but let's
Hmm.
talk about the way we cultivate friendship. Because I know you and I built a friendship over time where we would have coffee once in a while, we would text each other, we would ask each other questions about what each was doing. How are some of the ways that you cultivate friendship in your life with other women?
Well, there have been seasons where it's harder because you're so busy, and again, sometimes you don't have time to sit down and have a lot of one-on-one conversations with your girlfriends. So you maybe will choose to have group dates. It's like I need some girlfriend time, and I can't see, Sally and Jane and Ruth all separately this week, but maybe we can all go together and have coffee. So you have a little bit of time. You make it work. Um, and obviously there are, levels of friendship. You have like your core
Right.
group of people that know you really, really well. You've probably been long-term friends, and those people you try to prioritize and spend time with them. And then you have like bigger circles of people, which it's healthy. This is just life. And it's healthy to have those bigger circles, because just like you and I are not probably, we're not in each other's closest circle, but I know that I could call you for things in a heartbeat. Like even just when I was starting to write my book and you had written your book and I was such a fan of your writing and you were so kind to take a phone call and say, well, this is, you gave me some advice. And there's no one in my closest core friend that could give me that same advice that you could, right? So that's what's so good is to have a variety of friends, because if I need help with insurance, I call my friend Donna because she knows about that sort of stuff, or if I need a medical opinion, I call a friend of mine that's a nurse, or, you can't be everything to everyone. But cultivating friendships for me, one of the things that I've really started doing, I learned, is that we all used to meet out at like, let's all go to dinner, right? We'd meet at a restaurant and we'd go have dinner. You cannot have deep, authentic relationships in a restaurant.
Correct.
You just can't. And so we started, my girlfriends and I were like, no, let's just do a potluck. Everyone throw a dish together and let's meet at a home, because that's when the deep conversations happen. And to have authentic, deep friendships, you have to have these conversations. You have to be able to be free to talk about going out to dinner and spending $100 at a restaurant and talking about nothing but surface stuff, which is what you do when you go out to a restaurant. I'm not saying there's no value in that, but you need more. In order to really nurture
Right.
relationships, you have to be able to be in a safer place where you can talk about those hard things, like, what's going on with you, Sally? Well, I got a bad medical diagnosis and I'm upset about it. There's things that when we can rally around someone and we can talk them through them and we can be there for one another and we can make plans together. And so that's one thing that I have really enjoyed, that me and my friends have been trying to do, is like avoid the restaurants and get in each other's homes and gather around each other's tables and be around each other's families and do, they talk about doing life together. If you're going to
Yes.
spend the evening together, yeah, do it in your homes. And it doesn't matter if your house is messy. No one cares, ladies. Like, we're just there together. It doesn't have to be perfect, because that was one thing for me. I'm a perfectionist and I've been struggling with that. And I was like, oh, I can't have anyone over. My house is not perfectly clean. Y'all, that's the kind of stuff that's creating distance. It's creating isolation. It's a
Barriers.
barrier. We have to get over that.
Yes.
No one cares. I have never walked in a friend's home and left there going, man, we had a great meal and we had great conversation, but it was ruined because I saw some dust on her baseboard.
Right?
It's just not going to happen. And so, yeah, I think being willing to just show our imperfections to each other. That's what's real, right? You may admire somebody that seems perfect, but you relate to someone that's real. That's who you relate to. And so just don't be afraid to be real with each other, for sure.
Yes. And, we just have to stop that perfectionistic cycle.
Yes.
Because I have struggled with it. I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm still recovering from
Yeah.
it. Because it does keep us from those deep relationships.
Well, and I worry about, what are people going to think about me? It's like, I got to get out of my own head and not worry about it. If someone comes to my home and they don't enjoy, they think it's too dirty to come back, that's their issue. If they don't find value
Right.
in other things from the evening, I can't control that. That's something we can't control, and it's okay, because somebody will. Somebody will.
Absolutely. Well, let's pivot a little bit to our relationship with God and soul care. Because again, this continues to circle around these three really important relationships that we have to nurture. And I always tell people that cultivating a relationship with God is just like building a marriage or a friendship. It's about spending time together. And that in turn rejuvenates our soul. Spending time with our friends rejuvenates our soul. Spending time with ourselves and self-care rejuvenates us. But spending time with our Creator rejuvenates us at the very core.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little, I know you talked about this in the book, but what have you found that deepens your relationship with God and increases your own soul care?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, yeah, I get up every morning and have time just one-on-one with God. I start the day with me and him. I read a book several years ago that's called Confessions of a Prayer Slacker. And
What is it called?
Confessions of a Prayer Slacker by Diane Moody. And I loved that book. It really changed the way I looked at my prayer time. Because sometimes, it's just hard. When I was younger, it was like trying to close my eyes and have prayer. It just felt like, what am I doing? And then I just felt like I'm repeating the same things every day. And it's like, well, God already knows what my prayers are. And then, so learning how to incorporate a little meditation, some quiet time, all of that has been helpful. But one of the things that, and this may sound silly to some of you, but I have my little prayer area, my little prayer chair out in my sunroom that I go to. And it's a routine. It's just part of getting into routines in the morning. I pour my cup of coffee, which I have to have, and I go out to my little sunroom and I have my Bible and I have some books that I'm reading. And there's another chair out there. And I imagine Jesus sitting in that chair waiting for me. And I think, if another friend, Debbie, if you were sitting in that chair waiting for me, I wouldn't come out there and go, oh, hey, Debbie, and then scroll through Facebook for an hour.
Right?
I imagine him sitting there and I'm like, he's here waiting for me and he's excited about our time together and I am too. And so I'm going to be present for him. And so, that may sound silly to somebody, but
No, I love that.
but for me to like go, oh, there he is. Oh, here I am. Okay, this is our time together. So yeah, I'm not going to be rude and start answering emails while he's sitting here waiting on me.
I really love that visual. I think that will help some people because I think having a quiet time in the morning has all these weird stereotypical things attached to it that you think it has to look a particular way.
Right.
But that's the truth.
Yeah.
He's always waiting. And so I love that you visualize him waiting
I visualize him sitting there with his cup of coffee and waiting for me. And I bring my coffee and we sit down. And it's like, and then I think to myself, this is another thing. I used to be so ritualistic and I need to read one chapter in my Bible and I need to do one devotional. And it's like, da, 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 da. And I sit down and every morning is a little different for me. I kind of sit down and go, what does my soul need today? Does my soul need a little more meditation? Does my soul need a little more prayer? Do I need to just cry out to God? Am I having a hard time? Does my soul need more Bible study today? Maybe my soul just needs to read a book from an author that is nurturing to my soul at the time, So every morning kind of looks different, and I try to get in touch with what God and my soul are needing to connect, how they're needing to connect that day, if that makes any sense. But just having that time, I mean, sometimes I just stare out at the trees and I look at the wind and the trees and the clouds in the sky, and I just find myself with tears in my eyes and awe of how, well, the sun came up again. Isn't that amazing? I mean, sometimes it's simple things. And then other times it's deeper, darker moments with God, but those are my things. And then also just trying to remember to take him with me through the day. It's like, okay, once I get up and I leave my little time with him, remember that I didn't leave him out there. He's going to follow me along and we're going to be going through this day together. And it really does make a difference. Soul care is at the heart of everything. When my soul feels connected to God and I feel good about myself, that's part of self-care, that also helps me stop comparison in friendships. It's a thread through everything. And so believing that I'm good enough because God loves me and God made me for a purpose and God made me fearfully and wonderfully made, right? Unfortunately, I think for me, there was a lot of negative marketing with God in some of my earlier religious times where it's like, you're a crappy person and you need to be grateful that God gives you the time of day, basically was what I heard as a young kid. It's like, oh, I could never measure up. I can never measure up. No, God loves us. Yeah, you're right. We're flawed. And he loves us anyway. And all he wants is us just to keep coming back. Just keep connecting. Just keep connecting, and he'll guide us right to where we need to be. I truly believe that.
I love that. So true. Well, as we wrap up here, I'm going to talk a little bit about a few other things that you have going on. You have a podcast. Do you want to tell the audience about
I
God and My Girlfriends?
do. It's my new favorite thing. I love podcasts because I love having these conversations with other smart, intelligent, faithful women. It just fills up my soul like we're having today. And so the podcast is a way for me to get to do that. And it's called the God and My Girlfriends podcast. And we talk about spiritual things, we talk about friendships, and we talk about self care and all kinds of stuff. We have a little girlfriend chat in the beginning, and then we usually have a special guest on at the end. I'm actually editing today the final episode of season 4, and we're going to take a little summer break because that's good self care for us to take a little break. So, yeah, we will start again probably in August, and we'll do a season 5 in the fall. And we appreciate you came on and were part of season 4, which we were grateful to have you on. It was a great podcast. So if y'all haven't heard that, y'all need to go listen to our interview with Debbie.
Yeah, I can put a link in the show notes to that episode. That was a fun one.
It was a
I
fun
enjoyed
one.
that conversation.
It was a fun one. And so, yeah, that's been something that I've really enjoyed doing in this season of life. I actually just quit. I've been on the road for 10 years with
You
Christopher.
retired.
Kind of retired. Retired from the road. For 10 years I was on the road with Christopher Cross, and I loved it. And stepping back was a really, really hard decision for me. But it's one of those things where you start feeling the Lord, kind of tapping you, and then the tapping gets harder and harder, and then it's kind of they're slapping you on the back. And it just became clear that it was time to turn the page. And I hope and pray that I still will get to do a few shows with him here and there. He knows that I'm ready to sub at any moment. But as far as full time travel, yeah, I'm 62 years old, and it was just hard on my body, and I wanted to be able to be more present for God and My Girlfriends Ministries. I want to grow that nonprofit. I want to be around for my grandkids, as I mentioned. And so, so the podcast is something fun to do. And hopefully we're going to do a few more events. We're planning a retreat this fall with God and My Girlfriends. So, yeah, if anyone's in the Nashville area and wants to learn more about our little nonprofit, you can go to godandmygirlfriendsministries.org. We have an online book club that's starting in May where we're doing The Gift of Being Yourself by David Brenner. It's a self-care book. It's the sacred call to self-discovery, and it's really, really great part of self-care is just learning about yourself and learning about choices you make, what drives certain, bad habits. It's a really, really great book. So if anyone wants to join us on that, it's online on Zoom Tuesday night starting May 7th for 6 weeks. We'd love you to join us. And that's where my heart is these days, just trying to help encourage women. And like you, I think that's why you and I have bonded, because it is a big part of both of our hearts. And I love that about you. And I feel connected to you because of that. So that's awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for being with us today. Where can the audience find you online besides God and My Girlfriend's Ministries?
Yeah, MarciaRamirez.com. I also write on Substack 2 or 3 times a month. So marciaramirez.substack.com. You can subscribe to that for free if you want to get my writings in your emails. And then also I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, just Marcia Ramirez, at Marcia Ramirez. You can find me. I do have a Twitter and a Threads, but it's just too much for me to. I don't do TikTok.
Right? You
It's
can't do
too
all the
much.
things.
I can't do
You
all the
just got to
things.
pick and choose.
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, find me. And also God and My Girlfriends is on all of that too, on Facebook, on Instagram. There's a God and My Girlfriends podcast on Instagram. So follow us and join the community and the conversations, and we'd love to have you.
Well, thanks so much for being with us. You are a delight, and I love our friendship, and I really appreciate you being here for Midlife Crescendo today.
Well, I love the work you're doing. I think it's really, really going to help so many women. I'm a big fan of yours personally, and with your work and with your music and everything else. So, yeah, I'm grateful, and we need to go have a face-to-face coffee soon.
I hope you enjoyed these past 2 weeks as we focused on intentionally cultivating relationships with yourself, your friends, and with God. If you don't give yourself time to refresh, you cannot be a refreshment to someone else. And no one can fill you or be all that you need except your relationship with your Creator. Not a spouse, not a family member, or your best friend. It's vital we spend time cultivating our spiritual relationship with God. It is the soul care we need. But I know sometimes life is so busy, it seems hard to find time to connect or to have a quiet time or even a conversation with God. Whether you still have kids at home, or are helping take care of grandchildren, or are taking care of an aging loved one, or your job is so demanding that you are living your life through exhaustion, at some point, something's got to give, or you will hit a wall and there will be no peace to be found. When my daughter was 3 and I was 8 months pregnant with my son, we found out that my daughter Deanna had to have open heart surgery for a hole in her heart. If she did not have the surgery, we would be looking at a heart and lung transplant for her down the road. This was overwhelming to hear. The doctor reassured us it wasn't an emergency, and in order to avoid flu season, he requested we wait 10 months for her to have this surgery. This, my friends, was the longest 10 months of my life. But to add to the load of overwhelm, our son was born and he was very sick the whole first year of his life, which also overlapped during this time. There was nothing that could sustain me during this difficult season but my relationship with God that transformed my anxiety to peace on a daily or sometimes moment by moment basis as I met with Him in prayer each morning. I was exhausted physically and emotionally, and there was not much time for rest with a toddler and a sick infant. There are many more details to the story, and you can read about my journey in my book, Dancing in the Kitchen. But suffice it to say, my relationship with Jesus was my very lifeline in those months and has continued to this day. Here's the deal. I was a tired mama who didn't have lots of time. Most of my time with God was while I nursed my son, and it was filled with cries of my heart. I was anxious about the surgery and her life. Nothing was certain, and the doctors reminded us we had to be prepared for the possibility of her not making it. I read a small Bible devotional every day while I nursed Drake, and I prayed. But the verse that sustained me the most was Philippians 4:6-7. Be anxious about nothing, but in everything, with prayer and petition and thanksgiving, make your requests known to God, and the peace of God will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. That was my daily, crying out to God and asking for peace. And it came, day by day, moment by moment. I have experienced peace that passes understanding through the hardest seasons of my life, and you can too. So keep pursuing your spiritual relationship with God. It's so worth finding the time, but you have to be intentional. If you are interested in reading the full story, you can find my book on my website, debbiecunningham.net, or on Amazon. It's called Dancing in the Kitchen. That story is in chapter 3, and that chapter is called Matters of the Heart. I'll put those links and Marcia's links in the show notes. In the coming weeks, be sure to tune in for more menopausal health encouragement, inspiring stories from midlife women, and a few roundtable discussions about living in crescendo throughout midlife. Thanks for tuning in today. And remember, midlife is just a brand new season to find your passion and purpose for your grand finale. Talk next week.